Schlosshof is part of this connection. It's owned by the Republic and it's run by a company.
Is it the same company?
It's the same company.
This is a very important topic for India, and actually Kavita Singh wrote an important article about this. Namely, the government, had this idea of not leasing, but yes, in a way, giving certain very important monuments of national importance, such as the Red Fort, to private companies, with Dalmia company. There was an outcry really from the heritage professionals, and I thought, well, because I knew so many very good examples from other places in the world, and I know Rajiv, of course, and now I've seen you. I know you only in a digital form. I'm pleased to see you in reality. That's our life.
I got a bit late,
And I felt, in Austria, for instance, Schönbrunn and especially Castlehof are wonderful examples. The shops are amazing, with things that are really beautiful, that you really, you don't leave without taking some of these carefully curated projects. For children, they have a play farm where you can actually really, pick berries, water the plants. There are animals there. There is a museum. There's wonderful. There's so much to learn. There are plays. There's music, kites. I mean, it's just really like a Baroque spectacle for the contemporary times. So I always felt that Austria is a brilliant example for us in India to really show that before we kind of talk about all these problems and selling out and so on, and when we know, as you pointed out, even under government direction, things were destroyed, in the Red Fort, for example.
The main idea to build this company was that the government couldn't run this place probably because of tax. If they founded this company, and the company invested all the income in the building. And the idea was that if there is money left, that they will use the money to support other buildings that maybe come also in this field of das Schloss-Hof-Gesellschaft, also verschiedene Schlösser. So the idea was to create like a route for tourists from beginning with Schönbrunn, then Schlosshof, and if Schlosshof succeeded, then they maybe wanted to buy another castles on this former eastern border to make also restoration projects. So it's an ongoing.
Yeah. It clearly also shows the strength of an infrastructure, because if you have, this is very far. Why would people go there? But they do, because it's interesting, it's fun, it's wonderful to go there. But in the summer, in the countryside and so on, and you have something to do with children, the whole family. It's for all age groups. That's the other interesting thing of lifelong learning, that it's really aimed at everyone, from small children to adults, everyone. And I think this very inclusive kind of concept of kind of in this magical setting, because it is kind of three-dimensional, it's tangible history. This is what historic monuments are, and especially if they're done like this. It's a great example.
And it's not only planned for Austrian tourists, and also for Slovak tourists. So building bridges to present the history of all countries in this area.
The sad part is the vista now, because if you look towards the east, you see the ugliest kind of concrete slabs, which the kind of modern.
Slovak modernism.
So I'd like to know a little bit about the company then,
yes.
And how it's set up, or what its terms of reference are. Because when we hear in India about handing over a heritage monument to a company to run, we tend to have a reflex action that the company will not be respectful of the heritage nature of the building. So how is the company constituted, and what are its terms of reference?
Yeah, it was constituted by the government, so they had and have influence what this company will do in the future. It was the economic thing to say a company is better than the government itself, because they had other possibilities with tax, the taxing. So, for example, Schloss Schönbrunn, I think now it's for 15 years under this private, I'm not sure, I think 15 years, around 15 years, under not a private partnership, public-private partnership. And they had to manage, I think, millions of tourists a year. They had a lot of income, and this income allows to make the restoration work in Schloss Hof, for example.
Is this known as this public income?
Yeah, it was the income of this company.
Yeah, do we know how much that is? Do we know?
We can make a research, but I don't know exactly. And the idea was if the Castle Hof is successful as Schönbrunn, they have so much income that they can support another castle and so on.
Right.
So that's an ongoing idea.
The income is only from the ticketing?
Ticketing, events, what I didn't mention, this Castle Hof, there are a lot of markets. At Easter time, in winter time, there are markets, there are special events with horses for children.
We are developing now, the Center for Historic Houses is developing such a festival. At the moment we have someone in Mehrangarh, the princess, I don't know if she is supposed to be here, I don't know where she is. And I try to do that in Mehrangarh Fort, but as I said, I've been in touch with them for the past year, which is very, very slow. So I'm trying to work with privately owned houses now first to develop this. Jodhpur is another possibility, I think, which is of interest.
And another idea was to use this castle for conferences. For example, when George Bush came to Vienna years ago, there was the idea that they held the conference there, but it was cancelled because of security reasons. But otherwise, this place would be a wonderful place for governmental events.
Just to give you an example.
We rent it out to rich Indians for weddings. For example, too, Miss Belvedere was rented out to Mr.
Brother of Mr. Jindal.
Oh, that is really?
So not only they rented the whole Belvedere cast, they flew the whole, all the guests in and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So that's a great market.
Yeah.
I mean, they rent the whole cast. Palace, no?
Indians bringing their money abroad instead of investing in the buildings here.
And we love that.
It's very difficult to invest it here. It's much easier to invest it elsewhere.
The thing invested in is just spent.
Spend.
And one detail, the whole second floor of Castle Hof is empty. It was used as barracks, and the rooms are really in a condition like 1955, without usage like right now. So, for example, these rooms would be wonderful as hotel rooms or something. And then these events make sense.
They
That the
did this
people
now
could
hotel
stand.
rooms in Schönbrunn as well. I saw that, you know.
And in Schönbrunn
some suites.
there are
And
one
Jaipur was doing
suites
this now
for
for the first
hotels.
time. You can rent with Airbnb a suite in the city palace Jaipur for like $5,000 a night if you want.
Can I ask a question about the method of restoration? Obviously, this is an 18th century
25.
building, and was there, how much of it was modernized, and what was the input of technology in that process, and was there a debate between modernization and authenticity?
No, it was a debate, but we made it the Austrian way, because the specialty is the Alterswert, so the value of how to explain it, that you can see that the thing is old, that it's used, it's in a good condition, but not in a new condition. So that's the so-called Alterswert.
Atavistic. What is the term you used?
Alterswert, it's the value of
Imparting our age.
of age, yes. The question, when we began the basic structure, the architecture, was the best thing you can get for money in 1725. So it was in a perfect condition, but the surfaces were decayed and destroyed through the army use. So we had a lot of work for restoration and reconstruction of plaster, of the interior design, of the wood design and so on. But there's not so much technology inside.
Electrification,
Yeah, electrification, yes.
air
Yes.
conditioning.
A special point was the security work for so against fire. So that every door, we used the historic doors, we splitted them, made new technology inside, and covered them with the Baroque surfaces. So this place as a museum, as a place where you can hold events, is on the height of technology in this case. But we have no air conditioning. We have a little bit of not heating, also Feuchtigkeit,
Humidifiers.
yeah, that's true. And
No
for the
heating.
what?
No heating.
No, it's a heating. There is a heating, but I'm not sure.
Is it open in the
But it's
winter
not.
or
Yeah,
closed?
but it's not an air conditioner.
No.
It's also open in winter now. What is brand new is the water technology for the fountains, because they had really problems northern Alps because of winter time. In the Baroque times, the pipes were destroyed through ice. So when we made the archaeological excavations, we found the traces of repair from the Baroque times. So a few years after they were finished, they had the problem with the technology in this time that the pipes broke. So that's new. Also the fountains are new. It's a pity that we didn't succeed. From our department, we wanted to hold the historic isolation. But the architect said it's better to make it in concrete, so that there is no loss of water. So that's new. Unfortunately, that's the
And in
technique.
terms, sorry, this is connected question. In terms of the labor,
Yes.
so did you go back to the 18th century techniques of reconstruction, or did you use the machinery to carve and
Now, for the buildings, we use the historic technology. We use the historic mixture of plaster.
Which was of lime.
It's lime plaster. Lime plaster. The only thing we made, because there are a lot of salts inside the historic structure, we did it the historic way with lime plaster, but with additional material that allows there are more bubbles, so that if you see it in the microscope, that the structure is a little bit more open, so that if there would be salts coming out of the walls, that they don't destroy the new reconstructed plaster, but that they are in these small bubbles.
Can you explain this technology?
Das ist wie soll ich sagen, ein Porenbildner. It's a
What is that? What do you
yeah.
add?
You mix it to the normal historic plaster. So you take cork, sand, water, and then with this additional liquid, it makes bigger bubbles that normal will.
What is the name of this language?
Porenbildner.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think this is interesting.
Yeah, but I will find out then.
And these pipes that you were talking about,
Yeah.
originally what was the material?
The material, they were wood. Yeah, there were two systems. A low pressure system from these 3 lakes with wooden pipes.
Wooden pipes.
Wooden pipes, yes. And there were high pressure pipes from iron. Iron and lead. We found both in the archaeological excavations. I think what I didn't told you, near these 3 lakes there was a water tower, and this water tower was functions like this, that there was like a wooden circle front of this tower, and with oxes, they kicked it
Like a water wheel.
like a water wheel, yeah, but not a vertical, but a horizontal water wheel with oxes, cows, and they pumped the water up in this small water tower. And if there were events, if there was an event, they called like today and said, now we need in 10 minutes we need the fountain, and so they made the pipes and the water came. So high technology in this time. But what was the problem? The water was every time a problem because of the pressure. So in 1750 they used in this place they used steam engines for the pressure. But in Belvedere, for example, near the Belvedere was all the castle of Schwarzenberg, and they used steam engines since 1725 only for the fountains.
So that has been replaced by electricity now. Now it's run by electricity.
Yeah, sure.
And the pipes also have been replaced by concrete pipes.
I think Kunststoff, plastic pipes. Modern technology, yeah. But the building itself, it's historic.
I was trying to get a notion of, was there kind of a lobby against use of modern technology within the conservation circles, saying, that's really bad that we use plastic pipes and all?
No.
So it's quite acceptable.
Yeah. Now, the only discussion was how to reconstruct the fountains. To use concrete or not. To use only clay and the natural stone pieces, or to make it out of concrete. And that was the only question. So the only discussion.
I don't have a question, it's a comment, particularly about the Indian context. I think it's the socialistic mindset in India, where we consider any kind of profit is something bad. And that's, I lived in the US for 10 years, and they don't have a national railway system, they don't have a national airline, their roads are private. In India, I don't know what kind of this mindset is there, that anything which is managed by a private sector company is something bad. Heritage is the value these buildings or these structures offer.
Yeah.
And that company would be really stupid if they do not save that heritage, if they do not capitalize on the heritage value of those structures. So thinking that road will be managed by a private company, they will not change that road. They will make it more accessible to the public. They will try to save it so that more people come and learn about it. So this is just a comment.
You're right. The question is, in the public view, it's a bad thing to have private investors in a governmental building, for example. But there are possibilities for contracts for limited time to say, okay, for 50 years run this place, but under the control of the governmental departments, state department. And also in the private sector, for example, Palais Schwarzenberg, it's run privately. With a family, they have this place since 1715 in the center of Vienna. But the problem is to run it in an economically acceptable way. And so they made contracts with other companies, for example, hotel companies, for 50 years, for 70 years, maximum 99 years. And they bring in their money, and under our control of our department, we make now the restoration work. And I think it will function this way. They will run this place very profitable for 70 years maybe, and then the whole investment goes back to the family, the whole building.
You also have this in India, the Taj shall we move to our next speaker?
Thank you.
Unfortunately, yes, we have a few cancellations. Thank you very much. I think it's also really lovely and kind of refreshing to have something maybe that you are not doing yet, prepared for what you do. Yes, I would like to ask Mr. Nilo to present. And Professor Anuradha is not coming. Will be coming. You didn't do it. Oh, you didn't do it. She's
ये निकाल दो इसका बंद कर दो हाँ तो नहीं है नहीं हेलो ठीक है चेक चेंज कैसे हो सही ही तो लगाया था इसलिए तो मैं साइड चेंज कर कैसे होगी इससे दिस इज द नेक्स्ट लाइट्स ये कैसे होगी
Just to give you an example, this is really interesting. So the annual income from Casa Schönbrunn.
Good morning. Thank you, Mimi, for having me over. Though the principal subject of discourse today for me is about contemporizing the traditional water architecture of India, it cannot be spoken of without going at least briefly into its origins, history, and causes of it going into a state of suspension. And we all know that it has gone into a state of suspension. The legacy of the water heritage of the Indian subcontinent is supremely rich, largely dormant, yet highly resilient. So long as water remained a local resource, rain-fed or river-fed, India and its people, through their ingenious wisdom in water management, kept the country, by and large, water sufficient. Water in ancient India commanded the deepest reverence, especially in water-scarce regions where its availability hinged on the caprice of nature. These rainwater containments were created always with a sense of inclusiveness. You will see in this that there's flora, there's fauna, and human beings also. So it was always a shared resource, and it was allowed to be optimally used and serve the flora and fauna. And today we talk a lot about people's right to water without a thought to the fact that flora and fauna have an equal right to water and that we need to invoke that sense of inclusiveness. The exquisite aquastructures built as ecosystems to access subterranean water or to harvest rainwater were an integral part of the Indian communities and the social space from 2nd century AD till the beginning of the 20th century. To water, man brought the best of his skills as offering in worship by constructing water buildings replete with intricate carvings and sculptures as temples to water. Unfortunately, with the afflictions of changing times, the legacy of water heritage was lost to the lopsided development that is the bane of modern India. We now have a situation where we have sufficient precipitation but very poor conversion into utilizable water. These are two maps of India which give contradictory information about fresh water availability. The rainfall map shows that India receives close to 1100 mm of average annual precipitation, less than a third of which is enough to support the needs of an ever-increasing population. Yet the second map tells us that 54% of India faces high to extremely high water stress. This doesn't quite add up. Why is it that a country which has had a rich heritage of water is thirsting for water? To understand the causes and possible resolutions of the water stress of the country, I will take the historic city of the Thar desert, Jodhpur, as a microcosm of the entire country, as a case in point that can be expanded to apply for major part of India. It is also a worst-case scenario, being a part of the desert with temperatures rising close up to 50 degrees centigrade, hot dust-laden winds with annual precipitation as low as 300 millimeter. There is no perennial river anywhere in the desert. The only source of water was the occasional rain. The historic city of Jodhpur was founded on and around an outcrop of the Aravalli range. This is the Aravalli range, and this is the range shadow side, and this is where the outcrop, a small outcrop was, where Jodhpur was established. Zooming in on this outcrop shows the site of Jodhpur, the seat of the kingdom, the Mehrangarh Fort. This is the Mehrangarh Fort. Was founded in year 1459 on the highest peak of a ridge running southwest to northeast. This is the ridge which kind of divides the hill area and the plains area. The fort, the ridge was at the edge of this craggy expanse of hills on its northwest side and a long expanse of plains on its southeast. The fort was founded on the highest peak of the ridge, and from a defense perspective, the hills on its northwest were too rugged and sharply undulating for enemies' foot or horse-riding soldiers, while the fort's commanding height above the plains on southeast offered a clear view of any enemy approaching from this side. So this was in any case protected because of the nature of contours, and these were the plains from where they could actually see what was happening here. From the perspective of town planning, water sourcing and distribution, this location worked brilliantly. Natural lakes were formed in small and large depressions of the undulating, craggy hills, while the town was spread on the foothills of the ridge and in the plains where water of the lakes was distributed through a network of man-made surface and subterranean water bodies located in every nook and cranny of the dense settlement. So, on the hillock side, behind the ridge, rainwater was collected, and on the foothills, this water was distributed. Larger stretches of blue on the northwest hills are natural lakes, the smaller ones are ponds, and in the plains, the squares are the subterranean water structures, the step ponds and step wells. The dots indicate draw wells. The city is known to have over 400 water bodies throughout the city, located at a walking distance from any household. The entire gamut of water bodies is interconnected through drains, canals, and channels, measuring about 85 kilometers all put together. About 20 to 30 kilometers below the plains on which the city is built is a seasonal river, Jojri Nadi. The surplus water that falls in the town or the overflow drains into the seasonal river that flows through the villages, recharging wells, irrigating farms along its course, basically supplying water to the entire kingdom of Jodhpur. The aerial picture shows both the northwest side of the ridge where rainwater was harvested in natural lakes, these blue stretches. Yeah, so this is the northwest side and this southeast side. So on the northwest side, you can see the water bodies, which are in natural depressions. These are the lakes, and this is the city, where they have storage for water. From here, water would be carried through canals and put into these water tanks, and from there they would leak into the aquifers and into the subterranean water bodies. These water buildings provided respite from heat and dryness, transforming the ecology and microenvironment, making the place livable. Otherwise, the temperatures go up to 50 degrees centigrade. It would be very difficult to live there. So they also added some moisture in the neighborhood. These pictures show the diverse portfolio of water bodies to divert and capture every drop from the sky. Natural lakes in the hillside, these two. Then there's a storage tank over here from water from here got into the city. Then these are the subterranean water bodies, the step pond, the step well, and just a plain draw well. This is a domestic water collection, rainwater collection tank. This is the canal which would convey water from these lakes into these tanks. And this is the Jojri River where the surplus water would go.
On the upper right, this is Gulab Sagar.
That's Gulab Sagar. You're right. That's Gulab Sagar. Of these, while the larger ones were built by the state, the majority of the standalone ones were built by individuals and communities, many even under private ownerships. Until over a century ago, these on-site indigenous water bodies were the principal sources of water in the city, and except during extended periods of drought, kept Jodhpur water positive. Unfortunately, with the afflictions of changing times, the indigenous on-site water sources that form the legacy of water heritage of Jodhpur got overwhelmed with mega infrastructure, bringing water from remotely located dams and rivers in large volumes initially. Plenitude of piped water supply altered the concept of consumption and conservation of water, especially because instead of having to fetch water, it was tapped to home. Gradually in the process, water from being a free resource became a commodity. From being managed by communities, it is being controlled by corporates or is completely under state control. Post-independence, the state took over the ancient water bodies from the communities without any accountability and responsibility. Having been abandoned and forced into dormancy, the exquisite water bodies are in a shambles, defunct and forgotten. The government remained complicit when these were desecrated and encroached upon, and even complicit in destruction process by allotting mining leases in the catchment area. What were once temples to water have become tombs of water, literally and figuratively. This is, I think, 18th-century step well, which is being used as a dump yard. They're just piling up muck over there. So Jodhpur, despite having a great wealth of ancient on-site water bodies, today stands water impoverished and is seeking solution from off-site remotely located source from a river in Punjab, which as a sole source has failed to support the freshwater requirement of a burgeoning population. On the other hand, ironically, the unharnessed water gets converted into floods in the cities. So there's one nala over there in which you can see these cars, they've just submerged in the nala. About 2/3 of rainfall in Jodhpur, as in rest of India, is allowed to fritter away, and the total volume of water consumed in urban areas is less than the sum of stormwater and wastewater. These facts are disheartening, yet ironically hope-inducing. The pluvial flooding clearly demonstrates that cities are large active catchments, and there is a great potential for rebuilding the on-site water resources by harnessing the wasted water from local catchments. The story of Jodhpur exemplifies what is happening to the ancient water heritage of the entire country. I would like to revisit a slide at the beginning of this presentation of two water maps showing abundance and scarcity of water in India. I've added a third water map, sliced in the middle, which is an ongoing effort at recording the ancient stepwells in India, marked as innumerable blue dots spread throughout the country. The rainfall map shows the huge volume of fresh water that nature bestows upon India, and the stepwell map points towards a huge repository of rainwater harvesting facilities already available and that can be expanded upon continuously. These two amply demonstrate the fact that the severe water crisis that the third map shows is not due to lack of fresh water, but due to lack of water management. Clearly, the water stress can be mitigated if we channelize the first two maps, what the first two maps offer. Phenomenal amount of rainwater can be stored in these and the aquifers combined. If our ancestors could do it then, there is no reason why we can't do it now, considering that we consider ourselves far more advanced. So it is an old idea whose time has come again. India needs to apply itself to transforming the third map also into blue and become water positive. For the last 1 decade now, we have started putting into practice the idea of contemporizing the traditional water architecture by way of the regeneration and iteration. The aim is to reactivate the ancient water bodies, embed new ones in the post-colonial urban and rural fabric, and also in future developments. And once these local on-site water bodies are active and thriving, integrate them with the mega water infrastructure to create strong, sustainable network. As a first step, we have started building a water atlas of Jodhpur by identifying the historic water bodies, canals, and drains of the town. For regeneration of the water heritage, we have identified a huge number of ancient water bodies and are seeking support for philanthropists, community, and corporates to conserve and reactivate them. This 17th-century stepwell, the step pond, is among the first few ones that has been regenerated. The picture on the left shows it fraught with deep vegetation growth and structural damage. On the right is its picture after this was conserved and restored in July this year. The idea is to join these to the present network and supply the water to the neighborhood. Revived and returned to the community, these historic water buildings are becoming active socio-cultural spaces again that would ensure sustainability and upkeep. So there was a musical which was happening here, and that the community is using for leisure, other than, of course, using it for domestic purposes also. Their successful regeneration clearly proves that even after being in dormancy for over a century and being in state of grave dilapidation, these have the potential to bounce back to life. Another important component of the water heritage and the network of the city were its rainwater drains. Overflow from catchments and the streets of the town would flow through these drains and connect to the seasonal river. Today they've got choked or have been joined with sewer water and have consequently become major causes of floods in the colonies around their courses and also a hotbed of diseases. So another initiative in revival of traditional water system is in realigning the drains by finding appropriate diversions and by reconnecting to the seasonal river, and in the process make them part of the city's landscape. So we have just made a few proposals which we are going to present to the government. Depending upon their extent and volume, it is the same Nala that you, so I'm sorry. Depending upon the extent and volume, these can be repurposed as cities' landscape public spaces. During non-monsoon months, these could serve as green corridors, much needed in the city. And during rains, these could serve as drains, as blue corridors of the city, facilitating free flow and working as the city's landscaped corridors. Water bodies, old and new, are timeless. They have to be rejuvenated, innovated upon, and created from time to time so that heritage is continuously built with every new creation. At the end of 19th century, Jodhpur, spread in an area of about 7 square kilometers, had a population of about 100,000 only, served by over 400 water bodies. In the last 100 years, the population has increased 15 times, and the area has increased as many times. Surely, reviving all the old water bodies will hardly be sufficient for the present population. To keep the city water positive, it is imperative to iterate to the water heritage by embedding new water bodies in colonies that have come up in the last century and mandate new ones in future developments. Our idea of iteration involves two-pronged strategy. One is, of course, embedding the new water bodies in existing colonies, and the other is creating new water bodies in newer colonies. So this idea of iteration has been successfully realized in a new housing township in Jodhpur by building a step well, Birkha Bawdi, in the year 2009. The project is an initiative to restore the missing link between the ancient and the contemporary, and reassuring the golden era of water harvesting structures. On the top is a Google map of the site, a long narrow stretch of about 2 kilometers for a population of about 1,500 people. And on the bottom is an image of the site when work had just been initiated. A barren landscape on red sandstone hill, very low water table, and having not fit for consumption water. To make it an environmentally viable venture, it was imperative to create a dense green cover and ensure continuous supply of water for its sustenance. With gravely restricted supply of water from state, the only salvation was in creating one's own resource in conserving rainwater by ancient wisdom. And that is how the idea of creating a new Bawdi germinated. The construction of the step well is especially significant as it is built of locally available natural building material, that's sandstone, built by local craftsmen to collect the natural resource of rainwater, harnessed by gravity, creating an eco-friendly structure celebrating both stone and water architecture. This massive subterranean stone step well for over 17.5 million liters of rainwater is about 750 feet long, an average of 30 feet wide. Each bay is about 46 feet long, and this Bawdi descends 5 stories below the ground level. A network of stormwater drains converge on either side of the Bawdi. A quick tour of the completed project. This is the entrance to the Bawdi. As traditional as it is contemporary, the forecourt in form of a step pond occupies the foreground as an inviting community space for people to gather and celebrate, restoring the social cultural ethos of the intimate connect that the community had with vernacular water buildings. Its magnificence starts revealing itself as one descends. As one gets closer, the tributed frames form a concentric view to the post and beam structure, offering a binocular view of the inlets at the far end of the Bawdi. That's almost 750 feet away. Most of the stone used is rock-faced or rough-hewn, contrasting the rawness of stone with strict geometry. We could not have made those kind of lattice work and sculptural work. Those would be very expensive and it would take a very long time. As it is, we took about 3 years to build this. As you descend deeper, outside noises muffle, echoes amplify, and varying experiences of light and shadow are created. The beams and column frames on which the arcuated walls converge hold pavilions at 2 levels, quite like the ones in ancient stepwells, as social and experiential spaces for the visitors. As one goes deeper into the earth, looking skywards, diverse shapes of sky is offered through each varying frame. While the tributed form silhouettes the sky in a rectangle, the arcuated walls frame the sky in a parenthesis. And the final circular bay frames a telescopic view of the sky, kind of reaching out to it while simultaneously drawing the sun to light up its cavern. True to the tradition, this stepwell has been developed to serve as a public space also, with a meandering promenade and park along its walk. The before and after pictures bear testimony to the environmental and ecological transformation such projects can effect from barren to lush green. The creation of the stepwell in the 21st century demonstrates that such indigenous water bodies are still viable architecturally and financially, and that it is possible to build and expand the water heritage of the country. To mitigate the water crisis, India needs to foster an interaction between its natural and built capital, both ancient and modern, by adopting an inclusive approach in developing a sustainable water portfolio and make India water positive. This is a traditional folk painting depicting the ecosystem of the great Indian desert, an inclusive environment with water at the core. I close with the hope that the governments and the communities of the world work in tandem to recreate such livable environments fit for a harmonious and balanced coexistence of flora, fauna, and the mankind. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
When you're feeding water into these along the way, you're using stormwater drains?
That's right.
This is only rainwater or rainwater?
Only rainwater.
What happens to the other water, the black and the grey water?
That has been separated, that we only have stormwater drains.
So this is only seasonal?
Sorry?
It's only seasonal?
Of course.
So what happens with the black water? You have a separate switch?
Yes, we have a separate system.
So you plan that out?
Yeah,
The whole
that
piping
needs to be
system
estimated.
and all that?
Yeah, that goes to this treatment plant.
There is a treatment
Yes,
plant?
of course.
For the colony,
For the colony.
decentralized or centralized?
Only for the colony.
Only for the colony. Even the grey water goes there?
Yes.
Because danger is getting...
No, no. These
polluted
stormwater
water
drains
into
are
it.
absolutely segregated from the grey water and the wastewater.
So this is only a seasonal thing?
This is
And
only
how are
seasonal.
you reusing the water which collects?
For irrigation, presently for the irrigation, but what we have planned is that in case of emergency when there's paucity of water for domestic use, then we can put it into a filter and supply it to
And
homes.
pump it up and
Yes.
into...
Right now, it's almost a zero net energy project because we are not using any mechanical or electrical devices except for the pump to draw out water, and that too is a solar pump.
Okay. That's great. This is wonderful. Really
Thank you.
wonderful project.
Yes.
We did the same port in Jodhpur where they had this hotel,
Thar.
And
Thar.
each other.
So it's on the foothills of Umid Bhavan Palace.
Last year we had the water parliament held there in this port.
No, the fort is different. This is on the foothills of a palace. That's a 20th-century palace.
Yeah, the palace. That's where we had the water parliament of India.
Okay. That's being run by Taj now.
Yeah. And we had all the NGOs who are working in the area of water gathered there. We were there for 3 days.
Okay, I'm surprised because normally they do it at the fort, not at the palace.
But Gatsinji has a big foundation promoting
Yeah.
the water.
Yeah. Jal Bhagirathi.
Jal Bhagirathi.
I have a question about the relationship or to connect that the poetics in your architecture has with people who are living around that sector. How much? So the thought is that sometimes we architects and artists we design something and kind of
There's romanticism and all.
romanticism, and there was a lot of poetry in how you described the sector. And somehow, sometimes one thinks that you're completely not in sync with people who are either using it or they don't appreciate it, or there's a disconnect between what you are imagining and what you. So what is the engagement of the community that is living around this sector?
Now you're talking of the old ones or the new ones?
What? Because you call it true to tradition, and I was wondering because traditionally all these spaces have been kept alive through rituals, through the notion of water being sacred and all that. Is that
See, as far as with changing times, of course, that ritual thing is not there anymore. But what is very good about these rituals are that the rituals with water still exist. It's only that those rituals happen, they take water home instead of going to water. So what we are trying to do is rechannelize, have people go back to water for their worships and all, because a lot of things happen. Teach would be here. There are a lot of festivals which happen around water.
So is this boundary being used for
No,
this?
not the new one. The old ones are being used, what we have revived, and I showed you some pictures where trying to bring new social use to it, cultural use to it. That we are having musicals over there. People are using it for leisure, which they were using traditionally. Now, as far as this new boundary is concerned, it's a new concept. But the foreground where we have the step pond like of situation, there we allow festivals to happen. People come over there. And then there's a very good promenade that we have created, so people go around it.
So there's a layering of functions that happens throughout.
Yes, the only thing that we have asked them not to do is not bring any food material there. Other than that, musicals are happening, shootings have happened over there.
Nice to see the photographs of those kind of pieces.
I think I did share one or two pictures. So some dance performance was happening in the new park.
So can I ask a little bit about the economics of it? Is this part
Yeah.
of a private housing?
This is a
complex
private housing, and you'll be surprised the person who did this is a builder from Bombay. They are known not to, eke out even an inch of space for such purposes. But this kind of sensitive, I must say. And the Jodhpur Zionist was also involved with this project because the land belongs to him, so they were in partnership. So when this issue came up that they want to do very large landscaped areas, where would the water come from? And that's the time when we intervened and we said, why don't we create this? Now the story behind it is that the economics, as you're talking about. So this was, of course, this discourse had to be very short. I had to complete it in 15 minutes. Otherwise, we normally cover that also. So this is a hillock on which the township has been built. So we had to create roads over here. We had to create plots with plain surface. So we had to take out a lot of overburden of stone. So that's the stone which we have used in creating this. So it's so local that we have not even got it from faraway mines, except for maybe beams and columns which we've got from 15 kilometers away. Otherwise, the stone is from the very site where it is built. So, question how much it has cost us. So a notional value would be, I would say, 7 crores if I were to buy the stone from the market. Otherwise, I would have to dispose of the stone at a cost.
Yes.
So we have utilized the stone over here. And whatever excavation has been done, we have used it to make plains out of plots and making up the undulations on the site. So kind of a geological balance has been achieved in doing this.
And how long did it take?
3 years. We started in 2006 and we completed in 2009. So and we have not used an inch of RCC. It's all made out of stone.
Now?
No RCC has been used.
Jointing?
No RCC. We have just used
How
stone.
have you jointed?
Stone and mortar. That's an old technology. We still use it in.
And these are waterproof joints?
Yes, these are waterproof joints. So the first maintenance, right now if you go there, you won't find it in a very good condition because after 10 years, the first maintenance we are taking up, which also goes to show that stone is such a sustainable material. It requires such low maintenance. And now we are doing all the pointing. We are doing the pointing again with lime mortar, with all the kitchen recipes that were traditionally used. We are not using dal, but we are using fenugreek. We are using gur, google, methi, and sin. All those things we are using this.
But about the economics, I also wanted to know how did you
So it's cost
the
so if you take the notional value, it's cost you just 5 rupees a litre. And that's what we are trying to tell people, that it's actually not so expensive to do. So why don't we start doing it in other areas?
So when you were saying 5 rupees a litre, you mean reusing the stone and all that, not the market value?
No. Market value. At market value. I said notional value is 7 crores. So even if you were to buy stone, it's cost you that much. Thank you.
Is there, so has it had a demonstration effect when people are planning new developments in
No, that's what we want. We want
analysis?
people to emulate. So I have at least 2 clients now who want to do this, and for one we've already selected a site
In the vicinity.
in the vicinity, in about 15 to 20 kilometers from this place. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.